The doctors told Marina that her baby didn't survive childbirth. But one night, a year later, a stranger with a baby in her arms rang the doorbell and said, "I'm sorry." Morning at Alexander's house started like any other. The sun lazily filtered through the curtains, casting golden stripes across the floor. Alexander, a 35-year-old man with tired eyes and a hint of gray at his temples, stood at the kitchen counter, breathing in the aroma of his coffee. Warm rolls fresh from the bakery sat on a plate, and he was looking forward to a quiet breakfast, something rare in his busy life. His business, a chain of electronics stores, always demanded his full attention, but today he decided to give himself a break. The silence was shattered by a phone call. Alexander frowned at the unknown number flashing on the screen, but something told him it was important. He answered, and the cold, official voice on the other end spoke words that turned his world upside down. "Your child. We're sorry, but he didn't survive." The coffee froze in his hand. The roll he was about to grab remained on the plate. His appetite vanished instantly. His heart pounded, and his trembling fingers could barely hold the phone. "This is a mistake," he muttered. "You've got it wrong." But the voice on the line was firm. "You should come to the hospital." Alexander dropped the phone on the table and grabbed his keys without thinking. He didn't even notice knocking over his coffee cup, leaving a brown stain on the tablecloth. Only one thought pulsed through his mind: this isn't true. This can't be happening. At their last ultrasound, the doctor said everything was fine. Marina, his Marina, was so happy picking out names for their baby. They had already decided to name him Daniel. How could this happen? The drive to the hospital was a blur. Alexander sped through red lights, ignoring angry honks. He needed to see Marina. He needed to hear from her that this was just a terrible mistake. The hospital lobby was busy. Nurses bustled around, paperwork rustled, and somewhere a baby cried. Disheveled, with wild eyes, Alexander burst through the doors, ignoring the shocked looks from staff. "Where's the head doctor?" he barked, his voice echoing off the walls. The nurse at reception tried to say something, but he didn't give her a chance. "I need a doctor. Right now." His anger felt like the air before a thunderstorm, hot and crackling. Finally, an older man in a white coat stepped out of an office. His face was calm, almost emotionless, but his eyes held a flicker of exhaustion. "Dr. Johnson, chief physician," he introduced himself, holding out his hand. Alexander ignored it. "What happened to my child?" His voice shook with rage. "The ultrasound was fine. You did something wrong." Dr. Johnson sighed and lowered his hand. "I understand your grief, but please, let's talk calmly. Your child. Sometimes these things happen. We did everything we could." "Everything you could?" Alexander stepped closer, his face red with fury. "You did something wrong. I want the truth." He grabbed the doctor by his collar, but orderlies rushed over and pulled him back. Alexander struggled, shouting, "I'll sue all of you if you don't tell me the truth." At that moment, the elevator doors opened, and a nurse wheeled Marina out. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Alexander froze when he saw her. His rage melted into pain. "Marina," he whispered, stepping toward her. She shook her head, her lips trembling. "Don't, Alex. Not now," she said softly, her voice barely audible. She asked the nurse to take her back to her room, and they left him standing alone in the hallway. Dr. Johnson stepped closer, his voice gentler now. "I'm very sorry. We did everything we could. It's a tragedy, but no one is to blame." Alexander looked at the doctor, but his words sounded empty. Deep down, he felt they were lying to him. Something wasn't right. He turned and left without another word. At home, Alexander was met by his father, Stephen. Tall, with a stern face and calloused hands, he was a man who always knew what to do. Seeing his son, he immediately sensed he was at his breaking point. "Get in the car, son. I'll take you to our place," he said firmly, leaving no room for argument. Alexander silently climbed into the back seat. The entire ride he stared out the window at the passing gray buildings and bare trees. He didn't cry. The tears were stuck somewhere deep inside, tightening his chest. Stephen didn't try to speak, knowing words were useless right now. At their house, Elizabeth, Alexander's mother, was waiting. She hugged her son, holding him like she did when he was a boy. "It'll be okay, honey," she whispered, though her voice trembled. Alexander pulled away and sat on the couch, staring at the floor. "I told Marina she should give birth in a private clinic," he finally said, his voice flat. "But she wanted to be, as she said, closer to the people. And now look, they couldn't save our baby." Elizabeth shook her head. Don't blame yourself, Alex. Don't blame the doctors either. Sometimes these things happen. It's not your fault. Not my fault? Alexander snapped his head up. Then whose fault is it? They said everything was fine. And now Marina doesn't even want to talk to me. She thinks it's my fault. And I'm starting to think so too. Stephen came into the room, holding a cup of tea. Son, you're in no state to think clearly right now. Stay with us a few days. Marina will be home soon, and you need to be strong for her. Alexander nodded, but his mind was far away. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were lying to him, that there was something more to this tragedy than just an accident. The next morning, Alexander woke up early. It was only 7 a.m., but he couldn't stay in bed any longer. His parents were still asleep when he got dressed and called a taxi. "Where are you going?" Elizabeth asked, waking at the sound of the door closing. To Marina, he replied shortly and left. The hospital was quiet. The patients were just starting to wake up, and the halls were empty. Alexander walked to Marina's room window and called out, "Marina, I'm here. Look out." She appeared at the window, pale, but with a faint smile. "Why are you here so early?" she asked, opening the window. "I came to get you," Alexander said, trying to smile. "No more lying in this place. Get ready, I talked to the doctor." Marina frowned. "I still need to stay here 2 more days." "No, you don't," he said softly, stepping closer. "I was at my parents' yesterday, and they made me realize something. We're doing everything wrong. I was wrong, and I want to fix it." Marina looked at him, trying to understand what he meant, but his determination was contagious. After the doctor's rounds and a consultation, they discharged her. Outside, she asked, "Alex, what are you planning? Why the rush?" He leaned in and whispered, "I don't want you staying here anymore, and I don't want us living in the past. We're starting over. Together." At home, Alexander became a different man. He stopped staying late at work. He came home earlier, bringing her flowers or her favorite pastries. One day he even said, "Invite your friends over if you want. I don't mind. This is your home now. Do what makes you happy." Marina was surprised. "You used to hate having them around," she said with a smile. Alexander lowered his head, embarrassed. "I was an idiot. Things will be different now." Elizabeth, his mother, noticed a change when she visited. Over tea, she asked Marina what was going on with him. "He's so attentive now." "That's your doing," Elizabeth smiled. Marina shrugged. "I don't know. He said after talking to you that night, something changed in him. But I still don't understand what exactly." Elizabeth frowned. "Are you sure he isn't planning something? He's always been impulsive. Once he decides to prove something, nothing stops him." Marina nodded, but worry flickered in her eyes. She knew her husband better than anyone, and even though he'd become gentler, there was still that spark in his eyes, sometimes a determination that scared her. A month later, Alexander suggested going to their country house. "Let's get everyone together, parents, friends. We'll relax, grill some barbecue, enjoy the sauna," he said with enthusiasm. Marina agreed, though deep down she felt he was hiding something. At the country house, everything was lively and cheerful. Stephen manned the grill, Elizabeth prepared salads, and Alexander's friends chatted about the latest news. But Marina noticed her husband often looked away, lost in thought. At one point, Elizabeth pulled her aside. "Are you sure he's okay?" she asked quietly. "I feel like he's planning something. Maybe it's just my fears, but keep an eye on him." Marina nodded. "I know he still can't forgive the hospital. He thinks they're to blame. But I don't want him digging into it. It'll only make things worse." Elizabeth sighed. "Then talk to him, or Stephen and I will. But if he starts down a path of revenge, nothing good will come of it." The evening went by peacefully. Everyone laughed, ate barbecue, sang songs with the guitar. But Marina couldn't shake the feeling that Alexander was acting. His smile seemed too forced, his laughter too loud. A year passed. Life settled into a new routine for Alexander and Marina. When they found out she was pregnant again, they decided she would deliver at a private clinic this time. Alexander insisted. "No risks. I don't want a repeat of last time." Marina agreed, but something else worried her. Lately, she felt a tingling in her chest. The doctor said it wasn't related to her pregnancy, but she couldn't shake a sense of dread. She didn't tell Alexander he was already on edge dealing with business problems. One evening, coming home from work, Marina found a bouquet of roses and a card on the table. "For your happiness. I'm no poet, but you already know how much I love you," Alexander had written in his messy handwriting. She smiled, but a sharp pain pierced her chest. What was he planning? That evening, he took her to a restaurant. The table was reserved, the menu pre-chosen. Looking at her husband, Marina couldn't hold it in anymore. Alex, what's going on? One moment it's flowers, then dinner. I can't keep up with your moods. He set his glass down and looked her in the eyes. I want us to start fresh. Leave all the bad behind. I want to be a father, Marina. I know you want that too. His words caught her off guard. She nodded, but inside, her worry grew. Something told her the past wasn't done with them yet. Marina was sitting on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket. She held a cup of tea in her hands, not drinking it, just warming her fingers against the ceramic. Her gaze wandered across the sky, where the first stars were timidly peeking through the clouds. The pregnancy she found out about a couple of months ago brought her joy, but also worry. Her heart kept having those little pinching pains, and even though the doctors assured her it had nothing to do with the baby, she couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen. She tried not to think about it, but the thoughts kept coming back like stubborn flies. The doorbell pulled her out of her thoughts. Who could that be this late? She mumbled, glancing at the clock. Alexander wasn't home from work yet, and Elizabeth, who had come to help around the house, was making dinner in the kitchen. Marina slowly stood up, feeling slightly dizzy, and walked to the hallway. When she opened the door, she froze. Standing on the doorstep was a woman with a tired face and dark circles under her eyes. In her arms, she held a child. His big brown eyes, framed by long lashes, looked at Marina with curiosity. He was clutching a plush teddy bear tightly to his chest. Something in his gaze, soft yet deep, made Marina's heart clench. I'm sorry, the woman said quietly. This is your son. Marina felt the blood drain from her face. Her fingers, still holding the door handle, began to shake. What did you say? She whispered, unable to take her eyes off the boy. His face seemed vaguely familiar, but she couldn't understand why. Elizabeth, hearing voices, came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands with a towel. Marina, who is it? She began, but when she saw the stranger with the child, she gasped. The towel slipped from her hands, falling to the floor with a soft thud. What is going on? She exclaimed, stepping forward. Her eyes darted between the woman and Marina, demanding an explanation. The woman lowered her head. My name is Olivia, she began, her voice barely audible. I was a nurse at the hospital where you gave birth a year ago. I did something terrible. I switched the baby's ID tags. This boy, he's your son. Marina felt the floor disappear from under her feet. She instinctively grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. My son? She repeated, her voice breaking into a hoarse whisper. But they told me he died. How? How is this possible? Olivia looked up, tears shining in her eyes. Elizabeth, regaining her composure, stepped forward firmly. Come inside, she said in a stern voice. This is not something we discuss on the doorstep. But I'm warning you, if you're lying, I'll call the police myself. Olivia nodded and, holding the boy close, walked into the apartment. Marina closed the door, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst out of her chest. They went into the living room, where Olivia sat the boy down on the couch. He held onto his teddy bear, looking around as if trying to understand where he was. Marina couldn't take her eyes off him. His features, the soft round face, the little nose, the chubby cheeks looked like a mirror image of Alexander as a child. She'd seen his childhood photos, and now those images came alive before her eyes. Talk, Elizabeth demanded, folding her arms across her chest. Olivia took a deep breath, gathering her courage. A year ago, I was desperate, she began. My life. It had fallen apart. My husband left me with nothing but debts. We had a daughter, Lily, but she died 2 years before that. She was only 3. Leukemia. I couldn't accept it. Every day I woke up thinking my life was over. My job at the hospital was the only thing keeping me going, but even there I felt empty. Seeing other women give birth to healthy babies. It was unbearable. Marina listened, feeling anger and pity battling inside her. She wanted to scream, demand answers, but something in Olivia's broken, sincere voice kept her silent. I'll never forget that night, Olivia continued, staring at the floor. I was on shift in the newborn unit. You, Marina, had just given birth. Your baby boy was healthy, so strong. I looked at him, and something just snapped in my head. I thought, why not me? Why was my daughter taken away while others got to keep theirs? It was like I went insane. I didn't plan it, I swear. But when I was alone in the room, I switched their ID tags. I put another baby's tag on your son, a baby who didn't survive that night. And your son got the other baby's tag. Elizabeth covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide with horror. How could you? She whispered. Do you even understand what you've done? Olivia nodded, tears streaming down her face. I do, but at the time, I wasn't thinking. I was in a fog. I told myself I'd take care of him, give him the love I lost with Lily. I quit the hospital a week later so no one would suspect anything. I moved to another area, started a new life. He was such a light in my darkness, so mine. But every day, I felt like I was lying, not just to you, but to myself. He would look at me, and I saw someone else's soul in his eyes. I knew he wasn't mine. And the older he got, the more I realized I couldn't keep living this lie. I couldn't take him away from his real family. Why now? Marina asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why did you wait a whole year? Olivia wiped her tears with her sleeve. I kept trying to tell myself I could handle it. But a month ago, I saw you on the street. You were with your husband, holding hands. You both looked so lost, but still together. And I realized I couldn't keep him anymore. He needs to be with you. I gathered all my courage to come here. I know you hate me, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want him to be with the people who truly love him. At that moment, the door opened, and Alexander walked in. He froze in the doorway, seeing a stranger, a child, and the tear-streaked faces of his wife and mother. What's going on here? He asked, his voice tense. Marina turned to him, her eyes full of tears. Alex, this is our son, Daniel. He's alive. Alexander went pale. His eyes darted from the boy to Olivia. He stepped forward but stopped, as if afraid this was a dream that would vanish any second. Explain, he said, his voice trembling with restrained anger. Olivia repeated her story without looking up. Alexander listened in silence, his fists clenching tighter and tighter. When she finished, the room fell quiet, only broken by the boy softly mumbling to himself as he tried to unbutton his teddy bear's little jacket. You, Alexander started, but his voice broke. You stole a year from us. A whole year we could have spent with our son. Do you even understand what we went through? I do, Olivia whispered. And I'm ready to pay for it. I just ask. Please, take care of him. Marina couldn't hold back anymore. She walked over to the boy and knelt in front of the couch. May I? She asked Olivia, pointing to the child. Olivia nodded, looking away. Marina gently touched his cheek. He looked at her with no fear, only curiosity. Hi, sweetheart, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. She carefully picked him up and held him close. His warmth, his scent, it all felt so familiar, so real. Daniel, she breathed, and the name she'd held in her heart for so long finally came alive. Alexander came over, his face a mix of pain and relief. He reached out and touched his son's head, his fingers shaking. My boy, he whispered, and for the first time in a year, his voice held no anger. Elizabeth stood aside, quietly crying. It's a miracle, she said, wiping her tears. A real miracle. But in Alexander's eyes, a shadow flickered. He looked at Olivia, his gaze heavy. This isn't over, he said softly. You'll answer for what you've done. And not just you. Marina, holding Daniel in her arms, felt her heart finally beat calmly for the first time in so long. She knew they had a long road ahead, investigations, court, figuring out how to live after all this. But right then, holding her son, she felt like everything would be okay. Their family was whole again, and no pain from the past could take away this light. DNA tests confirmed the boy was theirs. Happiness mixed with shock. But Marina and Alexander knew they would do everything to protect their child. Olivia, who had left Daniel at their door, disappeared without a trace, leaving only the bitter truth and a hope for redemption. The legal proceedings with the hospital began immediately. Olivia testified, admitting her guilt. Dr. Johnson was shocked but didn't deny his failure to oversee his staff. The case went to court, but Alexander decided not to stay stuck in the past. I want us to live for Daniel and our future child, he told Marina. Elizabeth and Stephen supported them. You're strong for letting go of anger, Elizabeth said, hugging her daughter-in-law. Now you have a real chance at happiness. Holding Daniel in her arms, Marina felt her heart finally at peace. The pains that had haunted her disappeared. She looked at Alexander and smiled. You were right. We need to start fresh. Their home filled with laughter and warmth. Alexander, despite his busy schedule, always made time for his family. And Marina, watching their son play and feeling their unborn baby move inside her, knew they had made it through. The past was behind them, and only light lay ahead. A summer evening wrapped their country house in gentle warmth. The porch, covered in wild grapevines, was scattered with toys. On the table sat a pitcher of lemonade and a plate of homemade cookies. Marina sat on the porch swing, stroking her rounded belly as she waited for their third child. Her face, tired yet glowing with quiet joy, lit up as she watched Daniel building a tower of blocks in the grass, while Lisa knocked it down with a giggle, making her brother fake a scowl. Alexander came out of the house carrying a tray of sandwiches, his temples streaked with silver, but his eyes warm and bright. He hugged Marina, looking at their children. "Our happiness," he whispered, and she smiled, squeezing his hand. 5 years ago, their lives were hanging by a thread. Losing Daniel, getting him back, the court case against Olivia who had stolen their son had left deep scars. But they learned to treasure every moment. Olivia disappeared after the trial, leaving only a letter asking for forgiveness. Marina thought of her sometimes, but Alexander focused on their family, letting go of his anger. Elizabeth and Stephen arrived for dinner. Elizabeth hugged her grandchildren, wiping away a tear. "You found your light," she said to Marina, and Marina nodded, her heart overflowing with gratitude. The kids called them outside to look at the stars. The family spread out a blanket in the yard, gazing up at the sky. Suddenly, Alexander's phone rang with an unknown number. He frowned as he answered, and his face went pale. "It's Olivia," he said quietly. Marina's heart clenched like an icy hand had grabbed it. After the trial, Olivia had disappeared, leaving only a letter begging for forgiveness. They thought she was gone from their lives forever. Alexander, his jaw tight, put the call on speaker. Olivia's voice, shaking and broken, poured into the quiet night like a cold wind. "He's my son, he's mine. I can't live without him. Please, let me see him." Her words stumbled out, turning into muffled sobs. "I thought I could handle it, but he's in my dreams every night. He calls me mommy. He needs to be with me." Marina held Daniel so tight he looked up at her in surprise. Her tears turned to terror, and her heart pounded like it had the day they found out he was alive. Lisa, sensing the tension, whimpered and buried her face in Marina's shoulder. Daniel, confused, looked back and forth between his parents and grandparents. Elizabeth went pale as she stood, her hands trembling. "Alex, hang up," she whispered, but Alexander was already speaking, his voice cold as steel. "Olivia, you're wrong. Daniel is our son. We went through hell to get him back. Leave us alone." He ended the call, but his fingers around the phone were shaking. The silence that followed felt heavy, like the air before a storm. Marina held the kids even tighter, choking back a sob. The past they had tried so hard to leave behind had burst back into their lives like a dark shadow, threatening to snuff out their light. Alexander looked at his wife, his gaze full of determination, but worry flickered in his eyes. "She's not going to destroy our family," he said. Less than an hour later, the doorbell rang. Alexander exchanged a look with his father and went to open it. Standing on the doorstep was Olivia. In her hands, she clutched an old stuffed bear, the same one Daniel had held when she brought him to them. "Where is he?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Where's my little boy? I know he's here. I can feel him." Marina, standing behind Alexander, held the kids close. Lisa started crying louder, while Daniel hid behind his mother, staring at the stranger with fear. Elizabeth stepped forward, her voice firm despite her shaking. "Olivia, you can't be here. You need to leave." But Olivia didn't hear her. She stepped into the hallway, her eyes darting around, searching for Daniel. "He's mine," she muttered, her voice rising. "I raised him. I loved him. You can't take him from me." Her words turned into a scream as she took another step forward, reaching out like she was about to grab him. Alexander blocked her path, his face hard. "Olivia, stop. You're sick. Daniel is our son. You brought him back to us. Leave now, or I'll call the police." Olivia froze, tears filling her eyes. She fell to her knees. "I'm not crazy," she sobbed. "I just wanted a family. After Lily died, I couldn't live without him. Please, let me see him. Just once." Despite her fear, Marina felt a pang of pity. Before her was a broken woman, whose pain mirrored their own grief from 5 years ago. But she couldn't let her threaten their family. "Olivia," she said softly, "you made your choice then. And you made it again when you brought Daniel back to us. Don't ruin that now." Stephen, standing off to the side, quietly dialed the psychiatric emergency number. "We need help," he said into the phone, giving their address. "A woman is here in an unstable state. She might be dangerous." 20 minutes later, an ambulance arrived. 2 orderlies and a doctor in a white coat came into the house. When Olivia saw them, she started screaming, trying to fight them off. "No, You can't take me. I'm not crazy. Her voice echoed through the hallway until the orderlies gently led her to the ambulance. She kept clutching the teddy bear, whispering the name she had once given to someone else's child. Marina held Daniel and Lisa close as she watched the ambulance drive away. Her heart tore between pity and relief. Elizabeth hugged her daughter-in-law, whispering, "It's over, sweetheart. You're safe now." But Marina knew that the shadow of the past would never fully disappear. She looked at Alexander, his face tense but resolute. "We'll get through this," he said, wrapping his arms around their family. Above them, the stars shone bright, but their light felt colder that night. Their hard-won happiness felt fragile, and as Marina held her children close, she silently prayed that no more storms would ever find their home.